Okay, this is JD. Welcome to Vuca Leadership Lab. This is the third video of our series, and I'm going to continue going through the 8 essential leadership skills for a Vuca world. And in the video before, we covered the emotional tension override, 2, the embodied listening, and 3, fanatic discipline. Here's number 4, dilemma flipping. This is one that I heard Bob Johansen talk about in Leaders Make the Future, and I highly recommend that you read it. These 10 essential leadership skills that are needed in a 21st century leadership education. Especially right now, dilemma flipping seems to be so prevalent. What this is it's the opportunity for you to see how to transform an obstacle. The longer that you stay and the more that you listen to the current reality that you have, the more you put your attention with devotion into the ambiguity and not know and not have the answers, the more enlightened you become. Silence has a way of speaking to us. When an emerging future possibility is making contact with us, it's like it's needed in this moment. So when we get into these dilemmas and we flip them, what we can do is, with alacrity, willingness, and courage, know that the obstacle that's in the way is the way. And therefore, these dilemmas that we can flip, we have to stay longer and listen deeper enough for these dilemmas to afford us potential ideas and solutions. Is this brainstorming? Kind of, but it's sort of a different form. It's actually turning toward the dilemma rather than running away or reacting against it. It's more of having a soft edge into the dilemma, treating it as an old friend, looking at it as a necessary invited guest. And then through it, as we sort of dance with it, we learn how to dance while we move out into the dance. There's a quality of engagement of looking at the dilemma from different vantage points, asking questions with humility. How does it work? How did it become this way? What are some of the systemic causes that caused it to be this way? We often see deeper when we see the iceberg underneath as to what's giving rise to the topsoil or what's happening at the top of the water in the iceberg. And so dilemma flipping, I think, is a very key piece in how you kind of learn to be playful in working with dilemmas and tinkering and fiddling with potential solutions until you get a eureka or an aha moment. Stillness and fiddling can help realize the path ahead. Here is the next one, number 5, productive paranoia. This one, again, is from Great by Choice. And the way Collins described it, as I understand it, was you need to be looking out beyond kind of throwing your line, kind of casting your line out into the future potential and looking for the 1 or 2 things that are most likely to take you down. I often think about Bruce Lee or Karate Kid on this one, that you had to really size up your opponent when you step in the ring, and you need to know exactly what's possible, what they might do. You don't want to undersize it. You don't want to overestimate it either. You don't want to go in overconfident, but you want to come in with just right at the level of understanding and applying the right instinct and the right strategy to move through it. And that means you've got to be paranoid a bit about what it is out there on the horizon that might be lurking, and then come up with some scenario planning, look at different options that you have as you're a bit paranoid, but you're very productive about that paranoia because you're sensing something coming and you're thinking about what those 1 or 2 threats are most likely to be, and you're laying out 5, maybe 3 options as to what you might do. When I think about the Titanic, this should have been the case. How do we man the lifeboats? How do we run through those things so that we might just hit an iceberg? It's very possible that we might. And so what are we going to do? What are the 2 or 3 scenario plans that we're going to run through? It's like running your fear all the way through your mind and saying, if it really happened, this thing that's most probable, what steps would I take? And that settles you down. See, that puts you in a more flexible state to be able to operate more fluently. And that changes the way that you approach your state of mind and current reality. So there's one for you right there. So I'd like to go into the next one. And this next one, I think, is so highly important. I think you're going to see it right away. And that is, we need to be very empirically creative. And that is that when we create something, when we make small movements towards something large, it's not like we're going to take a big bite out of this dilemma or a big bite out of this challenge. It's the smaller movements where we celebrate great victories. We have great love for these small movements, where we empirically measure something, and then we make adjustments and kind of see how it goes from there. And so that kind of creativity means that we need to base it on a comparison to the actual state versus the desired state. We need to find a baseline. So by setting metrics, what would be the best outcome from this? Or what would be the best case scenario? What am I going to measure? And then I have something to kind of benchmark my current reality. And as I move along and I start, stop, and continue, start, stop, and continue, start, stop, and continue, I keep doing the things that work, I let go of the things that don't, and I continue the things that do. As I start new things, I'm learning in a process of kind of trying on things as I'm going, and empirically, I'm pushing my next movement based on empirically creative steps. I can see this happening in creating a vaccine or creating some kind of solution for family integration or extending meals or all sorts of things where needs need to be met. And so as we think about these social needs, we might be able to extend this kind of way of thinking empirically about being creative. So it's not about creativity, it's rather creating something, empirically measuring it, and then seeing what those measurements tell us, and then we'll know what to change, what not to change. All the while, we have to take our identity out of this. We can't take it personal. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not going to work. And we're in situations like this where there's radical creativity going on. We're going to fail a lot. And that means we have to use failures like failure flakes for breakfast. That means we have to hope we fail quickly in order for us to come up again with something. It's like the ice pick and the ice climber. If I keep throwing it, I'm going to find a good leverage point and then throw it, and then I'm going to get up again because I found my leverage point. So we just talked about productive paranoia. We just talked about an empirical way of creating. I just talked about dilemma flipping. In total, we talked about emotional tension override, embodied listening. Yeah? And remember what those are, is that we overcome those emotional states by having something creative that we want to focus on. And of course, that embodied listening that I went into, and then the fanatic discipline of focusing on the one thing. And so you have 6 that are just right there. So in the next video, I'm going to finalize this by giving you the final 2, and then I'm going to give you 1 extra credit. So there's actually 9. So I'm going to give you 3 more. At this point, what I'd like you to think about is what has impacted you so far in what I've described. Where do you think you're more inclined to utilize one of these essential skills right now? And what would be some next steps that you would take to start looking into it? These are the skill sets that during these times when leaders are going through adversity, they need to build character, they need to build bench strength off this, like progressive resistance and building muscle in weights. We need resistance to be able to build our resourcefulness. This is what these essential skills do. I'll see you on the next one.